I've seen this play out in my time in government too. Foreign policy communications, particularly around war and peace, can be extremely complex.
Recently, President Trump suggested that allies like Canada stayed a little back from the front lines in Afghanistan.
Well, it's deeply offensive because it's factually wrong. Trump said a few weeks ago, we've never asked him to do anything. It's not true. I was in the room when Donald Rumsfeld asked us to do that. We did it. We relied on the United States to do it. And now we have, a United States ally that's maybe not as reliable as it has been. But now we're starting to realize as well with this trade war with the United States that even our closest ally could choke off key things we need to defend ourselves.
Is there any way we can actually recover and hold on to that Arctic sovereignty or whatever we have left?
It's never too late, but we're way behind.
Eugene, lots happening in the world right now. You've seen a lot too in your tenure, both in government.
Yeah, I'm old. I've seen a lot. That's true.
But, what is your political hot take right now?
I would say that my political hot take is foreign policy communications are challenging, especially when they involve the Middle East. I think that's what we've seen play out in the last couple of days in this country or last week.
What makes it challenging? Do you think it's the tensions or complexity around it?
It's balancing off sometimes almost contradictory positions in your language. And you saw this play out a few days ago when the Prime Minister said, I think, something to the effect that, well, if there is some sort of ground operation in Iran, Canada might be part of it, a hypothetical, ill-advised comment that got him into some trouble, and then talking about supporting the intervention and then, I guess, sort of backtracking and saying, well, it wasn't exactly consistent with international law, whatever that is. And international law is open to 1,000 interpretations, by the way. So I've seen this play out in my time in government too. Foreign policy communications, particularly around war and peace, can be extremely complex. One or two words the wrong way can get you in trouble. I was working for John McCallum during the Chrétien government's decision on the Iraq War, and prior to that, he made a comment in a press conference in Washington after meeting Donald Rumsfeld that got him into a lot of trouble and got the government into a lot of trouble, and he actually didn't think he had deviated from the basic line of the government. It was just a couple of words different, slight difference in emphasis, and it created a bit of a firestorm. So foreign policy communications when it comes to war and peace in this country are extremely complex. They're not easy to pull off, especially for liberal governments where it's never black and white, it's always charcoal gray.
We've seen two invasions from the U.S. in Venezuela, taking their president.
Yeah, that seems like 100 years ago.
Right.
It was like 8 weeks ago.
I mean, we've joked before, and I think it's very common, not only in the Ottawa bubble, but like a week in politics is like a year, or I don't know what's the saying. How has this speed felt for you, seeing it?
Well, like I say, these things are fairly recent past, but they seem so long ago because so much is happening so rapidly, likes of which I haven't seen before. And you forget about Venezuela. It's not in the news in this country. It's like it never happened. And it was a huge event. I don't actually really know what's going on in Venezuela, to be honest with you. This idea a year ago that the Trump administration was isolationist, well, I think we can all put that to rest. They're anything but isolationists. They're interventionists, actually, in a peculiar kind of way, but they're certainly not isolationists.
And going back to your point, you've seen a lot. Have you seen, yesterday there was another floor crossing from the NDP. We've seen 3 conservatives cross over. The Liberals just need the block and they'll get their hat trick of all the parties.
Yeah, that's a bit unusual, I would say, yes.
Have you ever seen to the point where floor crossings and then 3 potential by-elections might be again in favor of the Liberals could tip a government into a majority?
I have not seen that in my 35 years around here, I have seen lots of floor crossings. That's not unusual. I've seen floor crossings for and against the government, in a minority government during the Martin government, for example. There are people that left, people that joined, people that came in and went into the cabinet. So it's not unusual to see floor crossings. I've never seen a situation where a government is on the knife edge of a majority government and floor crossings can tip it one way or the other. I haven't seen that. I'm not sure that's ever really even happened in modern Canadian history, not to my knowledge.
Have you seen it though in this succession and this fast?
I've seen some really controversial ones. For instance, the David Emerson floor crossing that I was actually involved in, because I was at that time sort of interim chief of staff to the leader of the opposition while we were setting up the office for Bill Graham. And David Emerson phoned one day and told Bill this, and we did not see that coming. He'd been elected a Liberal a couple of weeks before, and he phoned to say he's joining the Harper cabinet. I mean, that was an extremely controversial floor crossing. So I've seen lots of that stuff in my time, but this is different, not so much in the people that are crossing. Frankly, they're not that significant people. They're not David Emerson or even Belinda Stronach or Scott Bryson, really. Or rather obscure MPs, to my mind, that are crossing. But they could have a huge impact on the government. But I think the more important point is the one you made about them coming from all parties.
Yeah.
That is pretty unusual. And that does speak, I guess, to the Liberals' broad appeal. If you can attract Conservatives and NDP into your party, that is interesting.
Do you think it is the Liberal appeal?
I think it's the polls. People cross the floor because they think it's going to help them win elections. I think it's that simple.
What do you think floor crossings signal to the public? Maybe the ones who are in tune with it, because not everyone is in tune with politics or care or understand maybe the significance of it. But for those who are paying attention, what does that maybe signal to voters?
Generally, or in those specific ridings?
I would say generally.
Generally, if they're coming into the government, I think it suggests the government is doing a good job and people want to join it, I guess. But the government's popular, which it is, relative to the other parties from the opinion surveys I've seen. And Carney in particular is in a very dominant position in all the opinion surveys I've seen relative to the other party leaders. So that's probably what the public takes away from it, even though it is entirely constitutional, legal to do this. But that's not to say the public likes it particularly. And I'm not sure where the public lines up on these things, but I think that's how they would perceive it, as the government's popular and people want to join it.
And, you know, you've worked on different foreign affairs files, defense files. What did you think of the federal government's new defense industrial strategy?
Ambitious, unprecedented. I think it does deserve adjectives like that. It's very significant. Words on a page, though. It's not executed. I'm still deeply skeptical that it will be executed, but I think it's impressive. And I know that earlier drafts of it were not that impressive. I've been tracking this pretty closely for well over a year. This began under the Trudeau government. It began in the fall of 2024. And the early discussions around this were, frankly, deeply unimpressive. So what came out in the end was actually really a shock to me, because it is a significant statement of policy that, if it is executed, could have a big impact on the economy and on the defense sector, obviously, but more broadly than that, because they're conceiving of the defense sector as much broader than the normal way we would define it.
What do you mean by that?
They call it adjacencies. They're dragging in areas like, for instance, critical minerals, even infrastructure, quantum AI is always thrown around. These are not sectors that are normally seen as part of the defense industrial base in this country. The defense industrial base is pretty well defined. There's been 12 years of surveys conducted by StatsCan and ISED on this. We have longitudinal data. It's basically 700 companies that provide goods and services to the Department of National Defense. Not one of them is a critical mineral company, I don't think. So they have a much broader definition. It's more like a national security industrial base that they seem to be conceiving of here. So as I say, I think it's that paper, that report, or whatever you want to call it, is significant.
And that was going to be my point. Like, couldn't you argue that critical minerals being part of Canada protecting them, and we're going to get into Arctic sovereignty, and AI, could you possibly argue that because the nature of war and attacks, like cybersecurity, Wouldn't that feature into defense, or were you,
Yeah,
as you mentioned, national security more broadly?
Well, I think there's a new view that started to emerge a little bit during the pandemic around this idea of sovereign control and sovereign capabilities of certain things we need to have control over as a country. There are some very basic things we did not have any control over that we might have had control over maybe a generation before.
Yeah.
And then we came out of the pandemic, and we really haven't done much about that, in my view. But now we're starting to realize as well with this trade war with the United States that even our closest ally could choke off key things we need to defend ourselves, or maybe even our closest ally could be a threat to our basic sovereignty, and that's changing the posture. So you have to start to look at other things that you need in terms of sovereign control related to your own national security and economic security. And I think that's what this defense industrial strategy is sort of trying to articulate. And the Prime Minister's talked about it
Yes.
in speeches he's given.
So you've warned that reaching 3.5% of GDP in defense spending by 2035 would fundamentally reshape the federal government. So if Canada does go down that path, what areas of federal spending do you think will likely be cut?
I don't think you can cut any area of federal spending to fund that. It's too big. Percentage of GDP is $27 billion or something like that. And it's a moving target, hopefully, if your economy is growing. No amount of cutting can fund that. I mean, you could eliminate every single federal public servant and you might yield $70 billion. This is going to take tax increases. Or it's going to take, right now, the way they're funding it is large deficits, indefinitely, structural deficits. Well, they can't persist indefinitely, we know that. So I think in order to pay for this eventually, there's going to have to be some adjustments on the tax side to pay for it. Or it's not going to be followed through with, or it's going to be a very slow burn. It's not going to be hit by 2035. But even the current increase to 2% is massive. You know, that we've never seen that amount of money go into any department in the federal government in the middle of a fiscal year, ever. That's never happened, not in peacetime anyway. So it's huge, and it's unfunded. You know, it's deficit financed. Some will argue in the government, I suppose, well, we're going to grow the economy, we're going to grow our way. That's always what governments say, and it's never happened.
Do you not even think with foreign investment coming in, as we're seeing Carney go around the world, strengthen Canada's relations with Europe, the Indo-Pacific?
I think that's all good, but it's not going to fundamentally increase GDP and hence federal revenue anytime soon. I mean, even if it yields all kinds of investment in Canada, and there's no evidence yet that that's the case that I've seen, but even if it does, even if it's wonderfully successful, you're not going to see that translated into significant tax revenue anytime soon. I imagine the thinking internally is we'll grow our way out of this deficit.
Yeah.
But as I say, that's never worked, ever, in this country. It's never worked.
Yeah.
And if people are advising in the public service, if they are advising the government that it can work this time, that's a big departure, by the way, from public service advice. I would be surprised. Productivity of the economy is bad. It's been bad for a long time. It's actually gotten worse this century, although it's a long-run structural problem. And we're under a trade war with the United States, which is squeezing our economy, could tip us into recession. So those are the basic realities of the economy. You can't get away from that.
There's obviously different pieces of the economy, like oil, we're seeing with how that's impacting our markets right now. Do you foresee that things are going to get worse? And I feel like that might be an obvious question, but what we're seeing with the impact with Iran and also this trade war, which seemed to have been ruled out by the courts in the US. Who knows if that will actually uphold with Trump leading, but it's exposed a lot of Canada's vulnerabilities. So is it just going to get worse before it gets better?
Well, I'm not one to forecast. John Kenneth Galbraith once said economic forecasting was invented to make astrology look respectable. So I'm not a big fan of forecasting.
Okay.
Nobody forecast the Iran intervention that's caused global oil prices to spike. I don't think that was in anybody's model. Nobody forecast the pandemic that blew the global economy to smithereens. Nobody forecast what happened in Venezuela. So who knows where it goes. On the one hand, we are a net exporter of oil, and there's now a huge demand for oil. And it may be not ephemeral. I mean, when we may have a big shortage of oil because they can't get it through the Strait of Hormuz for a long time, that could be to Canada's advantage. If we can get more oil to market, that's always been our challenge. And I noticed that the government has been exhorting the oil companies, I guess, to try and produce more and get it particularly to the West Coast, because it's Asian markets that are really suffering with the choke point in the Strait of Hormuz. And if they can take pressure off that, maybe it'll take some pressure off global prices. So I don't know where it's all going to end up. One thing we know is things are very uncertain.
Yes.
And business hates uncertainty. Business investment hates uncertainty. And there's a lot of global uncertainty.